Well, I have to tell you, my favorite newspaper in the United States is the Wall Street Journal. I find it the most prestigious. And in fact, it has a larger circulation than the New York Times. They say that the New York Times is read by people who think they run the country, whereas the Wall Street Journal, well, they actually do. And so it's a real feather in his cap to have such a column published there as our friend Dr. Daniel Pipes of the Middle East Forum has. The headline is Venezuela's Tyranny of Bad Ideas. And Dr. Pipes joins us now via Skype. Great to see you and congratulations. I know it's a strange thing to focus on, but the Wall Street Journal is really the most prestigious newspaper in America, other than what the alt-left would choose the New York Times. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. On the conservative side, it's the paper.
Yeah, that's
on
right.
the liberal side, many.
Now, you're the president of the Middle East Forum, and so you and I talk a lot about the Arab world, about Israel. Sometimes you talk about Turkey quite a bit. You're an expert in that subject. What brought you to write about Venezuela, which is on the other side of the world?
Well, I was expecting a number of people to say, huh? Why are you talking about Venezuela? What do you know about Venezuela? Well, I'll admit right off, I don't know that much about Venezuela, but I've been thinking for months now that this is a very pure example of how bad ideas can ruin a country. You don't have to know an awful lot about Venezuela to see that this was a functioning country that, in fact, was doing very well some 50 years ago, not so well some 20 years ago, but, okay, a flat economy, basically, but a functioning country. And then came Chavez with his terrible ideas of socialism, and he ruined it. Now, he was lucky because he died in March 2013, about a year before the oil prices started to collapse. And so it is his hand-picked successor, Nicolas Maduro, who was even dumber and more brutal than Chavez himself, who has inherited this mess, and he's just making it worse and worse. Daily one reads about the mistakes he makes, and he makes it worse and worse, and people are getting hungry, and people losing weight, and people fleeing, and people brutalized, and people criminalized, and it just gets worse. It's bad ideas.
Yeah, it's so true, and we try and talk to activists in Venezuela every other month or so, and the horror stories keep getting worse. I mean, the average Venezuelan losing close to 20 pounds just from sheer malnutrition. You know, those of us who are a little bit fat, or in my case, a lot fat in the West, you know, we can joke, wouldn't it be nice to lose 20 pounds? Not when you're forced to, through starvation. I want to point something out. It's very interesting. I learned this from your article, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of our viewers up here in Canada. You list the wealthiest countries in the world in 1950 as measured by GDP per capita. And it's no surprise that the United States in 1950 was measured as the wealthiest country in the world, and not too far behind was Switzerland. I don't think that would shock people. New Zealand comes in third. I don't know if anyone would guess that. I might have guessed Hong Kong, but that's too early. Hong Kong didn't really take off till later. Venezuela was the fourth richest country in the world, richer than Canada, richer than the United Kingdom. I guess they were still recovering from the war. In 1950, if you were an ordinary Venezuelan, you were wealthier than an ordinary Brit, ordinary Frenchman, ordinary Canadian, ordinary Norwegian. That's incredible to me.
Well, you know, the thing about oil, they started with the oil wealth in 1914, so it's been quite a while already. The thing about oil wealth is that it doesn't guarantee you anything. Yes, you can be rich as Croesus. Look at Abu Dhabi, for example. But you can also be very poor. Look at Iraq, look at Libya, and look at Venezuela. So what you need is both the oil wealth and intelligence to run it and spend it. And often you find that because a ruler has oil wealth, he doesn't have to depend in any way on his population, and therefore he can indulge any kind of craziness. Think of Gaddafi in Libya. Any kind of craziness he wanted to do, he could do because he had the money.
Right.
And one sees the same with Saddam Hussein, and one sees the same with Chavez. Chavez had $1 trillion, US dollars, in the 14 years of his presidency, and he could do whatever he wanted. And he did.
You know, I've had the pleasure of traveling to Hong Kong a couple of times in my life, and that's a country with it's such a tiny country, it really has no natural resources. Same with Singapore, which is really just a city, or even Switzerland, which is on this list. I mean, Switzerland has some natural resources, but it's not famous for its mines or its timber or its oil. I don't think it has much of any of those things. It's the rule of law, it's the capitalist system, it's a culture of work ethic, high trust society, democracy, civil rights. That's far better an indicator than oil. Well, let me ask you a question, because I see out of your home country, the party on the left, the Democrats, that used to be a center-left party, and Republicans used to be a center-right party. The Democrats in your home country have just nominated in Texas a far-left local city mayor to be a candidate for Washington, if I'm not mistaken, the mayor of Tallahassee. Their star candidate from the Bronx, Alexandria Cortez, so I can't pronounce her name, forgive me. I think a lot of our viewers know who I'm talking about, a delightful young lady who is a full-blown Marxist. The Bernie Sanders wing of the party is on the march. From Florida to New York to California, it's the radical leftists preaching socialism that are on the march, and I think at least the college age cohorts are buying into it. What do you think?
Yeah. What's so interesting is that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, one saw simultaneously a collapse of economic Marxism, socialism, that is to say, of taking over corporations and the government running the economy. That collapsed. And instead, the left went off into cultural Marxism, transgenderism, and same-sex marriage, and all those sort of things. Now it looks like it's returning to economic Marxism. But the lesson that was learned some 30 years ago is now unlearned and has to be learned again.
Yeah. It's funny because I just remembered her full name, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, so it's a bit of a handful. She is, although she presents herself as a working-class Latina, she actually came from a middle-class background. A lot of it is posing, I think, but I think there's something perverse about rich, coddled kids at university, which is these days is really a grown-up daycare. I mean, not everyone. Obviously, people are learning real skills. But a lot of these kids are at the richest universities. They're having all the benefits and luxuries and the ease and complacency of a capitalist society. I find it a paradox that they would indulge an ideology that is the opposite of their own lifestyle. They're preaching against capitalism while, on their $1,000 iPhones, they're tweeting against capitalism from a Starbucks. I don't get it.
But Ezra, that's always been the case from the 19th century on. That it was the middle class and the privileged who were more attracted to the ideals of socialism than the poor. And as I say, that died some 30 years ago. It wasn't around. The left was focused on other issues of gender, class, and race. It's not focused on taking over the economy. It looks like that's returning. It looks like that lesson has to be learned again.
Well, unfortunately, I think you're right. And it's a shame that we can't learn from the pain and suffering of Venezuela, that isn't enough of an example. I fear that we will have to pay a personal price before people are shocked out of their love for socialism. Sorry, go ahead.
Just as with the Soviet Union, with Venezuela, the left is saying that's not socialism. That's leftist capitalism or state capitalism, some other thing like that. No, that's socialism. That's socialism. That's the government taking over the economy. And it doesn't work. It didn't work in the Soviet Union. It's not working in
Yeah, that's what the left always says. Well, they tried socialism, but not the correct way, not the pure way. They always say that. Well, it's incredible. Dr. Pipes, once again, congratulations on this op-ed. I know I'm speaking too much about where it was placed, but it's such an authoritative article. I would encourage all our readers to look at it. They can find it at the Wall Street Journal or on your own website, danielpipes.org. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, there you have it. Dr. Daniel Pipes is the president of the Middle East Forum. Normally we talk with him about matters Middle Eastern, but I highly recommend his study on Venezuelan socialism. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch the daily show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.